right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session right after lunch. Looks like we've got plenty of spaces in between chairs, so if you need to stretch out, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. My name is William Smith, and I am a professional services engineer with Jamf. And our goal today is to take the mystery out of terminal and scripting. Now, let's do a quick exercise. For any of you who have a laptop that's open right now and you're taking notes, which is like checking email, I'd like you to do this. All right. Press Command Spacebar to open a new Spotlight window, and then type terminal. And when you find that, just press return and it'll open up. Now, in the upper left-hand corner of the terminal window, I want you to click the green dot and go into full screen mode. All right, just like that. And thank goodness we're not downstairs where we're going to get like a sunburn from this. All right, so you see your entire world now as nothing but a big empty window with nothing but a single line of text at the top right now. For those of you who are not familiar with the command line, how does this make you feel? A little nervous? How would you feel if this is the only way that you had to manage your Mac? You had this window. All right, so leave it that way until I tell you to exit full screen. And we're gonna talk about one of my favorite movies. In the 1967 movie Wait Until Dark, Audrey Hepburn plays a recently blinded woman. She has to experience her entire world without being able to see it. Now, for those of you who are not used to the command line, you may feel now that you have just lost one of your senses whenever you entered full screen mode. But what do we often hear about people who have recently lost or have one of their senses after having it? Like sight. Other senses grow stronger. Hearing becomes more acute. A sense of heightened. And even a sixth sense, like a spatial perception and understanding of what's around you, seems to develop, even though it's not technically one of your five senses. Now, Susie, the character that Audrey Hepburn plays, she knows her apartment and everything in it. Now, one day, a bad guy named Mr. Rote, he comes into her apartment and starts threatening her. He can see her, she cannot see him. But she manages to distract him by throwing a vase full of flowers and water at him, and remember, she knows where everything is. While he's distracted, she tears down the only light that's on in the apartment, which is her husband's darkroom lamp. And then, darkness. Now, here she has the upper hand, and she finds Rote's knife in the dark. But he has matches, along with a can of gasoline that he brought with him because his plan is to terrorize her until she returns a doll filled with drugs that she somehow accidentally acquired. She finds the gasoline can and she picks it up, and then following the sound of his voice, she starts splashing the gasoline on him. Now he's got a match. He's got no choice but to quickly douse the flame. And again, they're both in darkness. She has the upper hand in darkness. Try lighting a match now, Mr. Rote, she says. Throw your matches over to me. So Rote has no choice but to give her the matches. Now she lights one, threatening to throw one at him. Remember, he's soaking in gasoline at this point. She tells him to pick up her cane and to start tapping. Keep tapping, or she'll throw the match at him. Go on, tap, she says. Keep tapping. Keep tapping, keep tapping. She puts out the match and she says, tap. She has the upper hand in darkness. Wait Until Dark is terrifying to people who can see, because you can imagine yourself in Susie's place. Unable to navigate your world as you're used to, having to navigate it with other senses that may not be very acute or strong, that's a strange, strange feeling. If all you know is the Finder and how to click or double click, then having to suddenly rely on the terminal, that's going to be like, in a sense, going blind to your world that you're used to managing. And it can be intimidating. All right. If you're still at full screen, you can go ahead and exit if you like. Just move your cursor to the top, and then you get to see the green dot again and click it. You're back to your GUI. Now, who finds the terminal or the command line just a little bit intimidating? Quite a few hands, all right. Now, who would prefer just to use the Finder and your mouse and just click on things and never have to bother with terminal? That's actually even more people. It's kind of surprising. And now, who knows how to double-click on something in the Finder on 10 machines at the same time? Or 100 or 1,000 machines within a day? You can't do it. You're going to have to know how to use terminal, be comfortable with it, and eventually get into scripting. And that's why I'm here. I want to encourage you to not be afraid. Let's explore this and start making it part of your daily routine. So if you were trying to double click on 10,000 devices, it might look a little bit like this, like Kermit here. With half a dozen Macs or more, you're going to exert a lot of effort manually preparing them and adjusting settings over time, unless you have a management system like Jamf Pro in place. But even with Jamf Pro's built-in features like enabling macOS updates and creating user accounts and installing software packages, it'll never become a replacement for what you can do in terminal. No management system can replace the command line. What a management system can do is let you send one or more commands to all of your Macs quickly and consistently. You might even develop a complex set of instructions that Jamf Pro can deliver to the same machines repeatedly in a very consistent way. So I'll say it again. The command line doesn't really do anything more than what you can already do in the Finder. And quite often, it can do a lot more than what you can do in the Finder. But in all fairness, the terminal window can seem a little sparse. So what am I going to do with this? What do we see so far? The title bar has some interesting information in it. I see the home folder, the icon, I see my username, and I see something that says ZSH. So what's the significance of that little home folder icon in my username? A neat shortcut that we've had for a long time in the macOS is the ability to command click the name in a title bar, any title bar of most any app, to show us the path to the document that we're working on. So if I command click the title bar where it shows my home folder, I see it's taking me to my home folder. So what's this telling me? It's that I'm in my home folder right now. When you open up Terminal, you're starting in your home folder. You already know where you are. Now here, I'm viewing my home folder in the Finder. Just like I did in Terminal, I can command click, and I can see the path to my current folder. So already, opening up your home folder, looking in Terminal, very similar. Now to see the contents of my home folder back in Terminal, I type the ls command, which is short for list. And I see pretty much the same thing that I see in the Finder. Desktop, documents, downloads, everything like that. Just no pretty icons. So Terminal is all about no pretty icons. Instead of large icons in the Finder, I can view my home folder as a list from top to bottom. And in this list view, I get a little bit more detail to this, like the date and the folder sizes. And then likewise, if I want to view the contents of my home folder in Terminal as a list, I can run the ls command again and follow it with the -l option, which means one item per line. And then, -l. But just like in the Finder, here's my list of items, and then right next to it, there's my list of modification dates for each of the folders. So here, we're discovering that the basic things like viewing files and folders are really pretty similar when we compare Finder to Terminal. All right, getting back to the title bar, what's this ZSH? It's called Z shell, and it's an interpreter. The purpose of an interpreter is to translate something. So you have the interpreter terminal translating in machine code what your computer understands. So the interpreter just makes the terminal friendly. Now, if you type ls into the current directory, the interpreter converts that to something that the computer can understand. Now, likewise, it takes the machine code that is generated by the computer and it converts it to something that you can understand. It's an interpreter. So what's the difference between Z shell and the terminal? The terminal application actually is nothing more than just a window to let you interact with Z shell. You're seeing Z shell through, in fact, a window. And there are actually more interpreters on your machine besides Z shell. There's bash, there's TC shell, there's the Bourne shell, which is actually one of the oldest shells on Mac, and there's C shell, and there's even Corn shell. There's many different interpreters available. But the default in macOS Catalina is Z shell. So if I don't specifically say which interpreter I'm using, that's the one that I mean. All right. So why all these interpreters to do the same thing? It's the same reason that we have so many word processing apps. They're all written by different people to do essentially the same thing, but each one's got its own unique look and feel to it. So I like writing in Microsoft Word. But I hate how it defaults to automatically selecting entire words when I'm trying to just select a few characters. So it's got a little bit of a quirk there. BBEdit is one of my favorite plain text editors, but it doesn't support rich text. I can't bold, I can't choose different fonts, I get one font, one size. And then TextEdit, it's there in a pinch if I need it, if I need to do something pretty quickly, but I always have to go into its preferences and I have to disable its curly quotes whenever I'm trying to script. Otherwise, those curly quotes, those long dashes, they're going to break anything that I try to run as a script through that. All right, so here's a difference that you can actually see for yourself. Both Z Shell and Bash support a feature called Tabcompletion. Its purpose is similar to autocorrect on your phone. At any time, you can take advantage of Tabcompletion, use it, because it's not only a great way to type a long file path quickly, it's a great way to reduce mistakes. All right? But each interpreter may handle Tabcompletion just a little bit differently. All right. If I want to open Microsoft OneNote from terminal, I use the open command, and then I follow that with the path to OneNote. Now, the / at the beginning of this path that you see right here, that means start at the top of the drive or root. So in other words, I'm starting at Macintosh HD, and then I'm transitioning into the applications folder one level deeper, and then finally I'm getting to my app, Microsoft OneNote, at that level. I'm going to start typing my command. And then right here, I've started typing the word applications, and all I'm going to do is just press tab on my keyboard. When I do that, you'll see that the whole word auto-completes. My Z shell interpreter understands there are no other possible matches besides applications, and so it just fills in applications for me. So that's how it helps you keep things fairly well spelled out. And you know you've got your uppercase and your lowercase correct. All right, now I'm looking for Microsoft OneNote. So I'll start typing Microsoft, and I'll press tab again. And Z shell auto-completes the word Microsoft, but it doesn't fill out OneNote. Why is that? Can anybody guess? There's tons of Microsoft apps in there. They all start with Microsoft. So here's what happens if I hit a tab a second time. And then I see I have 5 applications in the folder, and they all start with Microsoft. And then Z shell shows them all to me. It needs me to pick one. If I keep hitting tab again, it goes down the list until it fills out the first match, and then the next match, and then the next match, until I get to Microsoft OneNote. So that's tab completion in Z shell. In case you missed it, I'm going to rerun the whole tab completion experience here. Here I start typing, Microsoft tab, keep tabbing until I get to the app that I want. All right. So what's different between Z shell and, say, Bash, which is the old standard default shell interpreter, say, for Mojave and earlier? Now, notice in the title bar, I've switched my interpreter to Bash. Now, if I start typing the same command to open Microsoft OneNote, it looks like tab completion is pretty much doing the same thing. I hit tab, and it gives me my list of options here. Until I get to this point, it looks like Bash shows me all the Microsoft apps, but if I keep hitting tab now, all Bash gives me is the list of apps over and over and over. Not quite as convenient. And I can't just type capital O because I also have Outlook on my machine, and Bash doesn't cycle through all the available choices. So with Bash, I have to be more accurate with my input. There's a slight difference between Z shell and Bash, but it's an important one. If you're going to be using your terminal every day, which I encourage you to do, you're going to come across some of these subtle differences. All right. All right, to finish up the title bar, what's this 80 by 24? That's just 80 characters wide by 24 characters deep. Is that really important? Not really. Just drag the window bigger if you need to give yourself some more space. And to be honest, the only time that I've actually found that knowing the size of my terminal to be important is when I'm curling parrot.live, and I don't want the terminal window to be too small. It's got to show me my graphic. All right, let's talk about commands. These are the commands that we use in terminal. You can run 1,000 commands-ish, 1,000-ish. We talked about ls earlier to list files and folders. We saw that we can use open just a little bit ago to open files and folders or even URLs in a web browser. Makedir, M-K-D-I-R, is the same as the Finder's make new directory folder. Software update downloads and installs Mac OS updates. Cat lets you read files. Hostname will return your computer name to you. And then, of course, Jamf lets you do all sorts of Jamfy things like update inventory or run a policy. Now, this is just 7 commands. I'm not going to go over the whole 993-ish commands, but I will show you where they live. If you were to open up a Finder window on Catalina, you're going to see that the default folders at the top of your Macintosh HD are just applications, library, system, and users. But there's more to that than you may realize. macOS hides a lot of its system folders. So to see everything, I want you to press Shift-Command period, and then this keyboard command is going to toggle your view back and forth between hidden and unhidden files. So you have a lot more at the root of your drive than you probably meets the eye. All right. Of these hidden items, there's 3 particular folders that I want you to look at. There's bin, B-I-N, which stands for binary. There's SBin, which stands for system binaries. And then there's another one called USR, which actually stands for Unix System Resources. It's not user. Unix System Resources. Let's look inside the bin folder. What do we see? A bunch of odd-looking black squares. Now, while they just happen to have black icons, that doesn't make them dangerous or scary. These are just a special kind of file. They're called a binary. So bin for binary. These are binary files. A binary is an application. Just like iTunes, just like Mail, just like QuickTime, a binary is an application. And what do you already know about applications? Most of them are going to be single purpose. They might play music, or they might connect you to your email, or they might play videos. And within each of those single-purpose applications are dozens or even sometimes hundreds of options, like fast forward in iTunes, or pause, or in QuickTime, play my movie, or play a sound when I receive mail. Those are just options. But the apps themselves still are just built to do typically one thing. Binaries are the same way. All right, a little bit ago I mentioned the software update command, and its purpose is to install Mac OS updates. So if I run the software update command in terminal, it's going to show me the help for how to use software update. I can also run software update followed by the -- help option and get the same thing. And if I run it with the -- list option, I get all the available updates for my Mac that I'm on. I can run it with the -- download option and cache all the available updates, or I can add -- download with the -- install -- restart command. And I can download and install everything and restart the computer if necessary. If I want to prevent my High Sierra or my Mojave Macs from seeing Catalina, I can hide it by ignoring it and then showing it again by resetting ignored updates. And new in Catalina's software update command is the option to fetch the latest full macOS update, or fetch actually the full installer. And you can do this not only just for Catalina, you can also do it for Mojave and I believe High Sierra as well. So this is just one command with one purpose. It's to help me download and manage my software updates. And I've just shown you 7 of its options. It's got a lot more. But in order to be able to do these simple commands, this is all I have to type. All right. Do you recognize this command? I've demonstrated this a couple of times already. This is where the ls command lives. Remember, this is for listing files and folders. It's inside that hidden bin folder. Now, if I wanted to run the application from the applications folder, like iTunes, I just double-click it. So what do you think would happen if I double-clicked this? It runs. Although I would never encourage you to do it on a day-to-day practice, if I were to double-click the ls binary, it would actually launch terminal, it would run, and it would quit. And from what we saw earlier, the ls command without any options means it's going to list the contents of my home folder, and remember, this always starts in my home folder. So that's exactly what it's done here, just by double-clicking it. So again, an application is very similar to a command line binary. You don't necessarily treat them the same way or call them the same way. They're still doing the same thing, though. All right, and take a look at the item count of the bin directory at the bottom. For those of you who can't see, it's 36. There are 36 binaries roughly in this folder. All right, so keep that number in mind. All right, now let's go into the sbin directory. It has another 62 items in it, although not everything is necessarily a binary, but we're just going to kind of, ish, as I was saying. So 39, 62. And then inside that USR folder, there's another set of bin and sbin folders. And if we look inside the bin folder, now we see a whopping 1,011 items in there. So guess what where the majority of your terminal commands actually live? They're all individual files, more than likely coming from this one directory here. And the second sbin folder contains about another 230-something items. Again, not everything in these folders is a binary, but I think 1,000-ish is a pretty convenient way of estimating it. Now, that's 1,000 tiny applications at your disposal. That's more than you actually have in the applications folder if you think about it, and probably more apps than you've ever installed in your life. So later on, when you begin automating things, you can add as many of these to a script file in the order that you want to execute them, and then pass it along to terminal. And it's just going to run one command right after the other until it's done. That's all a script is. All right. And you'll be able to do it all quickly and consistently to your entire fleet of Macs using your Jamf Pro Management Server. All right. So just to kind of wrap it up a little bit, what else did we cover? As an administrator, knowing how to navigate the command line is as valuable as knowing how to navigate the Finder. Knowing how to use the terminal to execute binaries is necessary if you want to be able to manage more than just a handful of Macs. And then no management system, not even Jamf Pro, can replace the power of what you can do with the command line. Jamf Pro will help you facilitate running those commands. And the command line basically does the same thing that you can do in the Finder. You have just one environment, and that's your Mac. The Finder and the command line are just simply two different ways of interacting with that same environment. And then the terminal is not just a window to your interpreter, but by default, that's Z shell on your Mac OS Catalina. Your interpreter is simply just taking commands that you're providing in English, and it's converting them to machine code. And then the interpreter is taking the machine code that it's getting from the computer and giving it back to you as something friendly that you can read. And while all the interpreters pretty much do the same thing, they don't necessarily do things the same way. The commands you run in terminal are really just tiny applications, and they behave the same way as apps that live in your regular applications folder. And they each have a very specific purpose, again, like Mail or iTunes or QuickTime. But most let you include options for controlling them. So just like iTunes has play, fast forward, pause, command line binaries have like software update, also have options for download, install, restart. Every command is a binary file that lives somewhere in one of those hidden directories that I just showed you. The bin, the sbin, and then the USR bin and the USR sbin. They behave almost like apps in your applications folder, and you just simply invoke them through the terminal. They run and then they stop. All right. Now that you have an idea of how terminal works, learning to script is your next logical step. Scripting is just taking those commands and running them in terminal, and that you want to run in terminal, but putting them into a text file first. And then a script just consistently executes those commands one right after the other. Now, I really like this example of scripting that I included in one of our webinars back in June. Here, I demonstrated the short script that you see on the right. To run the script, all you need to do is drag it into the terminal to fill out the path and then just press return. And let's see what happens.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes.
Pretty short and sweet. It says hello world. It one line at a time prints out the line that it's saying, and then it says it. Once you know how to use the terminal, you're ready to take those individual commands like echo and sleep and say and exit and put them into that file. Give that file to terminal, and it runs all the commands one at a time. And that's how you create a script. There's not much to it after that. Now, I've worked with our marketing folks to produce our Scripting 101 webinar that we've recorded and put online already. That was back in June. This is kind of a precursor to that. I include a little bit of what I talked about today in this, but I go into a lot more about scripting in that 101 session. That's an introduction course for you. We also have a companion PDF that goes along with that webinar. So if you like something in print, if you want to be able to copy and paste the examples that I provide, get the companion PDF and you'll be able to do that and follow along. And if you're a Jamf Cloud subscriber, don't forget you have access to our online training catalog as part of your subscription. It's for all of your employees, not just you. Our scripting series has 15 modules and video lessons that each take about 30 minutes to complete. And that's going to get you on the right path, and you'll get ready to take your Jamf 200 and then your Jamf 300. Remember, those courses now include a lot of scripting. This is a way to get comfortable before you start taking them. Right. I purposely did not go very deep into all the commands or their options and how to put them into a script. That's coming for you next. My challenge for you as you leave today, though, and this is what I do for anyone that I'm teaching scripting, as you work throughout the week, think about what you're doing in the Finder. And then at any given moment, challenge yourself to learn how to do that same thing in the terminal. Find the commands. Do it the command line way. Google it if you need to. I still Google all the time. In fact, that's probably what you're going to do 90% of the time. There's no shame in that. And then before long, you're going to find that terminal is really not as mysterious, nothing to really be afraid of. All you have to do is just keep tapping away. All right? If anybody has any questions, we've got a mic that we can pass around. Glad to answer anything for you. All right. Nobody's coming up. I'm either that is raising their hand back there.
Do I have the mic to do? Oh, God, I didn't realize I had to do this. Sorry. Okay, who had their hand raised? Ah, perfect.
All right. Hi. Quick question. Other than Google in general, do you have one site or two sites that you find the best as far as resources is concerned for
Oh,
terminal?
that's a good question. That's a great question. No, I don't. I wish I could give you a couple of sites. I'm going to, first of all, again, point you to our training catalog because that's newer stuff. It's also video, a lot of recording. But interesting thing about the command line, because macOS is Unix, BSD Unix underneath the hood, all the command line stuff has come along with that. There's very little that has actually changed in the command line. All those commands that I showed you, the sleep, the say, the echo, all of that stuff is actually pretty old, and it hasn't really updated that much. Once you've got a command and you've got the options for it, maybe Software Update has that extra feature that was added for Catalina for downloading the full installer, but for the most part, everything has been documented. It's all out there. I would point you to the man page on terminal. I hate bringing the man page up whenever I'm just now talking about it because those are really difficult to read and understand. But Google is your friend. Don't worry about trying to find the command first. Just say command line in your Google search, command line software update Mac, and you're going to get a ton of resources that way. Every website's going to have something different for you. But it's all pretty much going to be the same information. Right. Yep, over here.
Oh, good. I'm coming. Ooh, well, I can still give it to you.
So that double clicking to run the binary, does that only work with Unix binaries? Do you still need the dot command on the end of script files?
No, actually, the dot command, those do not end in dot command, from what I recall. The dot command actually is a terminal suffix. So if you were to put dot command on any file or folder, it would open up in terminal, right or wrong in that case. But that used to be a way that you could actually run something, a script, and actually have it call through terminal, as opposed to just running a script and having it run through a text editor all of a sudden. It's just showing it to you. So honestly, I haven't really checked, but the majority of the binaries that I've seen in there, they have no file extension. If you've ever taken an existing file and removed the file extension, you've likely seen it strip off the icon, and it goes to that black icon, which is the Mac's way of interpreting, oh, I think this is a binary.
Okay, so I'm right here, sorry.
Sorry. Or
that
yeah.
direction.
Whoop.
Right here.
Okay, I see you.
So you said that it's like best to be able to practice and use the terminal every day. Is there practical things you can do? That's just a standard workflow thing maybe that you can do in the terminal every day that maybe you do to spend time in it?
Yeah, so I write scripts all the time, so I can't, and I'm in terminal all the time. But I would do things that you would probably click a button in Jamf to say to do. That software update command is probably the best example I can give you. It's not likely very often that you, as administrators, are going to be creating folders. That's just something that you can do. But as part of managing your Mac, you're definitely going to be updating software. So first thing I would do is, on a regular basis, once or twice a day, not even twice a day, once every couple of days, just run software update. And the first thing it's going to do is show you that help. So then you're going to be learning, okay, in order to be able to get what I want out of software update, run it with --L to list, and then, or --list or -L, those are the same things. And then add a -A for all. So list all. And it'll take a few seconds to run, just as if you had gone into system preferences. But you'll see the exact same list of software updates. Compare that to what you see in system preferences. You're going to see it's pretty much the same thing. The one thing that you might notice a little bit different on Catalina is that Apple has done something different this time. And they have actually made the Catalina update on Mojave look like it, or upgrade. I need to be very careful what I say here. They have made the Catalina upgrade look like an update, and it's not. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's debatable. But they're putting it front and center right there where we have one place to download everything. You'll more than likely not see the Catalina upgrade appear when you run software update just to list. It's actually two different things. But first thing, run software update -A-L, all, list all. And then if you see something, run the next command, which is probably you want to install them. So software update download, -download, and -A, or I actually to install. You can download and that'll cache them, but they just sit there. But if you do -I, that means install. So it not only downloads, but it installs. And then eventually you're going to say, well, this update, the security update has a restart. Why didn't my computer restart? That's that next command that you have to add. So eventually you're going to start stringing together all these options. But software update is the best example of something that you would do practically as an administrator. So I'd start off with that one.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ooh, sorry, I was not looking. Ooh, you guys were first, right? Probably. I'll get back to you. Blue jacket. All right, come here.
We're all learning together. It doesn't matter the order. I had a question for you. You mentioned using Command-Shift-period to show the hidden files in
Okay.
I wanted to know, is that only in the window, or can you also do that in the terminal shell to show hidden files?
Oh, yeah. That's actually one of the more common ones to do. So if ls lists your files and folders, there's a combination of that I use all the time. Whenever I'm using ls. It's never just ls. I want that structure, that order. I want them top to bottom. So I always think of HAL, like in IBM, HAL 2001 Space Odyssey, -HAL. So if I run ls-HAL, -H stands for show me human readable sizes. Don't give me bytes or kilobits or something like that. Make it something that I can understand. So -H for human readable, -A for all. That includes hidden and non-hidden. And then again, the L, which puts it in the list.
Perfect,
So
thank you.
just remember ls-HAL, -HAL.
Another one over there. I see it. Do you want my passing it?
Hi. You can run. I've been running command lines, commands in Jamf. I assume that they're just running using whatever admin account
What's that? I'm sorry?
They're run under the admin account?
Not necessarily the ad. You're probably thinking the management account.
Uh-huh.
Actually, not anymore. Originally, yes. But over time, and this has been over the last few years, Jamf has moved to a system of Jamf agents and some extra binaries and helper tools, so that today the only purpose for that management account, so if you're ever making a quick add package and you check that box that says create management account, the only thing that that's doing is putting that management account on there for Jamf Remote.
Okay.
If you are not planning to use Jamf Remote in your environment, you can choose not to create the management account on the machine. For legacy purposes, we still have to have something called a management account in that computer record. But as far as the account existing on the machine, don't need it whatsoever.
So they're run at root level?
So it's running through our binary. So everything that Jamf does, there's two sections that I always like to tell people. There's Jamf technology, Apple technology. Jamf technology is calling command line stuff.
Okay.
Almost everything that we do as far as installing a package, let's take that for example. If you run a policy to install one package, all you're doing is running the command line equivalents of here's my name and password, go out to this server, connect to it, authenticate, mount the Casper share, there goes my dollar swear word there. Mount the file share, copy down the package, so that's a CP command, copy to my computer. A package, a PKG file, that's a command's called installer. Installer is the command line equivalent to the Mac OS X installer that is actually running the pretty GUI when you double click on a package. So you can run that through command line, and then when that's done, we unmount the volume, and then we run Jamf binary recon. It's literally a script just to do one thing, but that's how Jamf works. Apple's technology on the other side, that's all the configuration profiles, the PNS commands, the push notifications, anything that has to do with their services.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah, well, my follow-up would be like, could I set up something in self-service where like non-admin users could run commands on their account? It wouldn't be happening from like a management account or at root level. It would be
definitely.
directed to their, like for instance, we constantly have a problem with keychain folders needing to be deleted.
Okay.
And
Definitely. If you can do it in terminal on your computer without Jamf, you can do it with Jamf. I'll just say that to begin with. What you're looking at doing is, if Jamf is running as root in order to execute all these commands, how do I then make Jamf run as root to do something for that specific user that I'm logged in as? And again, that's part of all these terminal commands that I was kind of pointing you to. One of those is called switch user. That's one way of doing it. Another way is to run the sudo command, and it will allow you to run as the current user. So the step before that is you need to do something like it used to be called who am I, that's deprecated, but ID-UN, who is the current user? And then you plug that information into the next one, and that's how you start running in as the user itself.
very cool. Thank you.
We are coming to time. So if anybody else wants to ask Bill a question, see now all the hands come up. I don't have time. I would love to share with everyone else, but feel free to grab Bill and his expertise as you guys all exit. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Deani.